Yeah, to hell with him. I'm talking about me.
Today on Eonmusic, I'm joined once again by Thin Lizzy, guitar legend, and now new entry into the art world, Mr.
No,
Scott
art
Gorham.
bum. You can just call me an art bum, okay?
All the best ones are, aren't they? How are you doing today, Scott?
Good, good. Thank you, Emma. It's good talking to you again. I know we talked, what was it, like you were saying last May? That was really good. So I'm all ready for the next round here.
Yeah, another hauling over the coals of the
Oh God, please, please.
music and art world. I mean, obviously, we'll start with talking about the art because I was at the art launch in London, and that's going back now. You're 5, 6 months since then. You've had a time for everything to settle. The art's out there. How does it feel this far down the line?
Well, I'm kind of getting used to it now. I think I mentioned on that exhibition that we did how absolutely scared stiff I was of
Hmm.
getting up there in front of everybody and showing these things that I had done over the last 40, 45 years. So that was very nerve-wracking. But, since then, I've had so many really great comments and talked to so many people. It's kind of got my confidence up and running.
Hmm.
So we're good with that now.
Obviously, you have nothing to prove as a guitar player, and you're so used to it. You've been on stage for decades, but this was something new. It must have been like letting a piece of yourself out there that the world didn't know about.
Yeah, a little bit because it was I hadn't told anybody that I was doing any of this at all.
Hmm.
It was basically just for me. I would sit in hotel rooms, around the world, and just come up with these ideas and start drawing. And if I got a knock on the door, I would take my pad and pencils and put it under the bedspread, and so
Hmm.
nobody knew what I was doing. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. When you're in a band, you kind of take all the applause and all the heat together, right? So you can kind of lean on each other. Well, they were right for that criticism, and that was great what they said about you, blah, blah, blah. But when you're up there, on your Lone Ranger, all of a sudden, showing these things that you had never shown anybody else before, it's a pretty daunting project actually process to go through. So,
Hmm.
you're right about that.
In our last chat, you alluded to the fact that you've been doing some of them while you were on the road with Thin Lizzy. Was it almost therapeutic?
It kind of happens in kind of every aspect of my life. Good times, bad times, weird times, confusing times, painful times. There's one I've got that's actually called pain, and that's it was a condition that I had. It was called cluster headaches, right?
Hmm.
Which are they actually nicknamed the suicide headaches, right?
Hmm.
And for good reason. You feel like, and if you look at the picture, I kind of think I got described it pretty well, but you feel like there's like maybe a railroad spike being driven into your skull while somebody else has got a steel boot and kicking in your other eye. It's
Uh-huh.
a terrible thing to go through. So I kind of just wanted to get that one out. I just kind of drew this of how I was feeling and what it was like, what you feel that you look like when you're going through this, although you don't look like that, but that's how you feel. So it was kind of important for me, for myself to kind of just draw this and kind of get it out of my system. So yeah, so you could say it was a little bit therapeutic on some sides.
You've chosen pain and free speech to go on to the t-shirt designs.
Right.
Why those two? Were they the most popular sellers, or did you think they look great on shirts? What was it?
Well, probably because those two at that point were the most popular ones. Yeah, free speech. The whole thing is I really believe in free speech. I mean, we've had world wars about being able to speak your mind and say anything you want to, right? But what that picture is really saying is, back in the 80s when social media just started to get rolling and people thought, I can say anything I want to all these new friends that I've got, only to find out that all these new friends that they'd had completely disagreed with them, and they've been crushed along the way because
Hmm.
they just kind of divulge too much about, their feelings on that subject or that, right? So that's why I kind of obscured the mouth.
Yeah.
It's almost like a reminder. You're like, yes, we have free speech, absolutely, but you got to think about what you're going to put out into the public
Hmm.
domain out there. Think before you speak. So that's really what that picture is all about,
I guess that has never been more relevant, especially in the age of social media.
right? And especially in the Trump era, where he kind of says anything he wants, and people kind of go, "Did he just say that?" I can't believe he said that.
The last time we spoke, you alluded to you might gonna resize some of the prints and sell kind of a little bit more affordable prints or whatever. But you've moved, you've just went into the t-shirts. Is that correct, or are you envisaging, a grander plan for what's going to happen with the art going forward?
Well, yeah, we're gonna add to the t-shirt collection because I think there's probably a couple of more that probably even look better on the t-shirt than the first two, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and I'm going to be adding probably possibly four new print to the collection that I've already got right now. So I will be doing that in the next couple of months. I know there's a couple that are going to come out before Christmas, so we'll see
Hmm.
how that goes. Maybe that's where all the criticism will come in.
It's obviously your primary focus right now. Is it nice to be doing something slightly different?
It kind of is, and I'm glad you asked me that. It kind of explained. I've been doing the whole guitar writing, touring, all of that for 50 years now. And I hadn't actually realized that until somebody made that obvious to me because I came over in 1974 and got in the band in 1974. And we kind of never stopped, and I never stopped. So I've been constantly doing this for 50 years, for God's sakes. I thought, wow, how is that even possible? But so I thought, with the art thing coming up, I think it's a nice little at divergent kind of path to take right now, just to kind of recharge the batteries and all that.
Mhm.
So I love playing music, and I love getting out there. I love touring, but there is a time where you got to kind of step back, and kind of get a breather. So my breather is to be able to do this, the whole art thing, and I just find it really fun.
You must be hoping that you'll be getting out there playing and see people wearing these t-shirts.
Well, that would be nice. I mean, I've had people go, so when you go out on tour, are you going to have your own booth out there selling your own T-shirts? And
Yeah.
that would be a kind of absolutely not, because
Yeah.
that would be infringing on everybody else in the band with the
Yes.
merchandise and all that. So I won't be doing that. No, the only I guess the only way that we can get the t-shirts out is through the website and all that. So,
Mhm.
and make sure you come and visit it. That's
Um,
my commercial.
I want to talk about the music. I had a little look through of your co-writes of some of the songs you co-wrote with the band because I saw
Right.
you had enthused recently about She Knows. It's the opening track on that first album.
Yeah, that one is kind of near and dear to the heart for me. Yeah. I had just joined Thin Lizzy. Uh, and I was just getting to know the guys, and Phil and I became, pals kind of straight off the bat. We just really clicked together, quickly, right? But and he kept saying, he goes, yeah, I do write the majority of the material, but I want everybody in the band to write. I want everybody's name on these songs. So whatever ideas you have, just bring them forward, right? Some will get used, some won't, and that's just kind of the way it goes. It was like, oh, okay. But we were rehearsing. It was either for a really short tour or maybe for the Nightlife album. I can't remember, but I had that riff and I was just kind of warming up,
Hmm.
da 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 da, that. And Phil turns around and he says, "Man, is that yours?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you have any more to that?" And I said, "Well,
Hmm.
yeah." So I played him, the next bit, and then the next bit after that. And he says, I love that. He says, do you mind if I write some lyrics to that? And I'm
Mhm.
like, are you kidding me? Absolutely. So what happened there? That became the first song that Phil and I wrote together
Mhm.
on the first album that I'd ever done, and it became the opening track for that album. So I'm just I'm really proud of that song, and I also I would love to redo that
Mhm.
song somehow. Get another bunch of guys in there and to just kind of re-record that just to see how it would sound with the new technology today and all that, and just to see what we could come up with that song.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I have to ask. Any names? You said a bunch of guys. Who would you like to do it with?
There's a whole load of guys out there that are great. There's Vivian Campbell from Def Leppard. Richard Ford is from Guns N' Roses. I've worked with both of those
Hmm.
guys. They're great. Marco Mendoza, great bass player.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of guys out there. The problem being with all that is, they all have day jobs, right?
Hmm.
They got to pay the rent, and I imagine their rent is pretty high. Uh, and they're all contract. So I have to kind of with that kind of thing. I have to kind of wait to see when all the stars align
Hmm.
perfectly to get everybody lined up on that
Yeah.
stage.
You're referring to a Thin Lizzy 2024, obviously there. Another track I wanted to mention was Massacre. What a riff. Talk to me about writing that. Did you write the intro or did you write the main diddle diddle da diddle diddle da
That
one?
was for me. The da-da-da-da-da-da, and the da-da-da-da-da. That was
Yeah.
Phil. He actually
Right.
came up with that on the bass, right?
Uh-huh.
And as soon as I think both myself and Brian Robertson heard that, we started to feed off of that
Hmm.
riff because there's multiple ways you can go with that,
Hmm.
because it's a really wide open kind of riff
Hmm.
and kind of inspiring at the same time. You want to put something on
Hmm.
that riff, right? So, and also that song became a real sort of steadfast in the set.
Hmm.
when we made up the different uh, set list for whatever tour, a Massacre was in there for a very, very long time, purely because we just loved playing that song.
Hmm.
It was one of those things where you could, as a guitar player or a drummer, whatever, you could really get your rocks off with that one. And so it was a fun song to play.
That's some kind of beautiful musical genius going on there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Those kind of things are open to those kinds of chord changes and all that. When you keep that one pattern lick going, there's all sorts of things that you could do underneath it to make it kind of flower out a little
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
Right? I think really we could have done it even more drastically if we if
Yeah, yeah.
we had a little more time to think about it. But the problem was with those first couple of albums, there was a time related thing, and you had to start and you had to finish that
Hmm.
album. So a lot of the times you would do maybe like a lead guitar thing, and the next day you go, I'm not really happy with that. I really would like to try that again. Well, Doc, we don't really have time because we have this whole grocery list of other
Hmm.
things we got to do. So a lot of times you had to live with what you did on that day.
This kind of circles back to the last interview we did because we talked a bit about Adrian Smith and in '88, Maiden actually covered Massacre. Did you hear their version?
No, I did. I thought they did a really good job with it. And I can
Hmm.
imagine with them playing that live, they got a real kick in the ass doing that live also, right?
Hmm.
Uh, there was Bon Jovi that did "The Boys Are Back in Town." Eh, it was it was okay, but
Yeah.
uh, if I'm going to cover a song, right, I'm going to try to maybe change it a little bit to try to make it my own, right?
Hmm.
Like we did with Rosalie. We took that Bob Seger song, and I remember the day that Phil showed me this Rosalie song from Bob Seger, and it's really slow. Da, 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 da. I'm like, Phil, what are you talking about here, right? He goes, no, what we do is we really bump it up in tempo, right? And really, we, bring up the guitars and, we light the place up, right? And I thought, okay, well, yeah, that sounds good. And Bravo was great on that because he grabbed that guitar by the neck and he just nailed it, right? And that made
Yeah.
everybody jump up and jump all over that. So yeah, but that's what I would do if I'm covering somebody else's
Hmm.
song. I would try to make it my own in some way, shape, or form.
You worked with a lot of great guitar players. You're always the guy on the left. Who was your favorite? I mean, not just musically, but personally, who was the easiest to work with?
That wow, that's a tough question, right? Because each one of these men had their own, characteristics, their own certain kind of talents that they could
Hmm.
and or could not do. Um, and personally, their characteristics on stage, that everybody was different. Uh, so to come up with the best, I mean, I loved obviously playing with Robbo because it was he and I that came up with the whole harmony guitar thing that every other guitar player that came into Thin Lizzy at that point, they had to adhere to that template,
Hmm.
uh, in which they did, and they were happy to do that because that's why they wanted to be jump on board because they loved the band, right? But that was the template, and it was me and Robbo that started that. So I think I probably, on a personal level, I probably laughed harder with Brian than anybody else in the band. He has this real kind of sick sense of humor, right? And I love that, right? So Gary, wow, what a musician! Oh my God! I mean, this guy could just about play anything, in
Hmm.
any style, right? And it was fabulous to be up on stage with this guy. I learned a lot from Gary, and I always tell a lot of younger musicians, always try to get on stage with somebody who's better than yourself, because that's the way you're going to learn something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you're playing with somebody that is maybe you're equal or maybe not as good, you're not really going to be advancing yourself. So
Yeah.
I always love playing with those guys that really, really thought highly of themselves, if I can put it that way, right?
I'm glad you mentioned Gary Moore there, purely because after, the difficulties and, with bad reputation and the things that happened there, next thing you come back with this Black Rose album and that song, rock legend Black Rose is jaw dropping. Can you
That's right.
remember putting that together? I mean, who pulled that? Was that all Phil? Did you work as a team? Did you have ideas? Talk to me about Black Rose.
No, that was when you listen back to it, it is a pretty complicated song, right? But on the surface, it seems kind of simple, right? But it's kind of not. There's a lot of moving parts going on in there. So we all, all of us worked on that song. I think Gary came up with a really great guitar solo in that song that really kind of glued that whole thing together, right? And
Mhm.
you're right. The lyrics that Phil came up with, and some of those were really kind of on the fly. They weren't in his songbook or his lyric book. They would kind of come to him at the microphone. And I always thought that was pretty cool of him to be able to do that, right? And a lot of those were keepers. That's what was on the fly actually stayed on the record. As soon as that album came out, Black Rose once again became a huge staple of the band. We played that every single night, right? And the audience was right with us, just like you were describing there.
Mhm.
They're kind of waiting for that song to come up. So I was more than happy to get up there and play that song.
Think it's kind of unusual in that you've got that part at the end. You're bouncing off each other rather than, and
Right,
then you
right,
join up in unison. I mean, that is
right.
so beautiful. What was it? Do you remember recording that?
I absolutely remember that, right? Uh, and I think it was Gary who actually came up with that bit, the call and answer
Hmm.
uh, kind of thing, right? But he wanted to carry it on much further than we actually did it. And I kind of said, well, there's got to be a cutoff point here. So why don't we cut it off about there, right? Which I think was right, you know. And in the end, so did he. But yeah, but that's what I mean. There's a lot of moving parts in that song that you really had to work out and
Hmm.
think about and get it right because you knew you're probably going to be playing this every single night.
Hmm.
So these parts needed to be as killer as they possibly could get.
I learned a lot of Thin Lizzy songs over the years, and that is definitely the most difficult to play. What would you say as an actual Thin Lizzy guitarist? What's the most difficult one to play?
Well, I've been in the band with other guitar players, after Gary had left, and
Mhm.
watched them try to do that actual solo, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, every once in a while they would get it, but more times than not, it would be, kind of slipping and sliding in there and kind of making up their own
Uh-huh.
things to try to get themselves through it. So, yeah, it was a difficult guitar piece. Uh, but yeah, as soon as he finished it on that day, I just went, God damn, that is amazing, man. That's an amazing piece of guitar work, right?
Tell me this. Is it true that around the time Phil passed, he was trying to put Lizzie back together? Did he approach you? Did that happen?
It absolutely did. uh, I went over to his house about, I guess it was, I think it was 3 weeks before he died, right? Mainly because I wanted to show him I was completely clean at this point. Skin was glowing, right? And I was like the picture of health, right? And I just wanted to show Phil, you gotta follow me on this, man. You gotta follow me. There's because he was looking terrible. He was having a hard time breathing, the asthma had kicked in, and so I just wanted to show him this can be done. Look at me. I was as bad as
Mhm.
as you, but we can do this, right? And he was going, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm getting off this crap. I hate it. This is terrible. He said, he says, Scott, we really got to put the band back together again. We got to put it back. And I'm looking at him and looking at the state that he's in, and he sees the way that I'm looking at him, and and I don't need to say anything. He goes, yeah, I know, but I'm gonna get off of this crap, man. And we'll put. I said, okay. As soon as we uh, get everybody healthy and roadworthy, let's do this, right? But you gotta do this, Phil. You gotta do this, right?
Mhm.
And he promised me up and down that he would. And 3 weeks later, I got the phone call that he was gone. And that just crushed me, absolutely crushed me. There's no more to say about that.
You were working on an autobiography, which I'm
Yes,
sure will cover a lot of what you've just talked about. What's the status of the
I,
autobiography? Where are we at?
uh, it's probably at the 3/4 stage, and it's funny. You already named the title of the book.
Hmm.
Can you
You told
imagine?
me the guy on the left or the man on the
That's
left.
right. I'm the guy on the left, right? Yeah, and it covers everything. Well, nearly everything. Obviously, there's certain things you can't say because then you got to live with it, right? But we got Midge here and there. Jim Fitzpatrick has come on board. Still trying to get Joe Elliott in there, uh, and Vivian, and all the different people that I work with. So unfortunately, some aren't here any longer, so we can't talk to them, right? But we're kind of trying to get as many really good stories as possible in this book as we possibly can.
Hmm.
This is done by a guy named Martin Powers.
Hmm.
He he did the Gary Moore book,
Hmm.
and he did Jimmy Page. He did the Jimmy Page book.
Hmm.
And the reason they wanted to do it on me, which I couldn't quite believe, right? But because Martin interviewed me for the Gary book,
Yes.
and he liked the stories that he was hearing, and went to the editor and said, "Man, we got to do a book on this guy, right?" So okay, here goes nothing. So now,
So
so now I have to be embarrassed all over again, right? So I got the artwork and now the book. Oh, geez.